In the Bahamas, heads of government of the Caribbean community, CARICOM, conclude the 44th conference sessions, which seeks to strengthen a joint market and economy for the region. In Peru, a decree imposed by the ultra-conservative government of the municipality of Lima goes into effect this Friday. And search and rescue efforts continue in Türkiye and Syria as 3 more people were found alive in the rubble more than 10 days after the earthquake. From the headquarters of TeleSUR English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South. I'm your anchor, Gladys Quesada, and these are the news. In the Bahamas, heads of government of the Caribbean community, CARICOM, conclude on Friday the 44th conference sessions, which seeks to strengthen and enhance the joint market and economy for the region, its flagship program. Discussions also seek to flesh out strategies related to COVID-19, other health issues, food and nutrition security, climate change and climate financing, as well as regional security. Also, participants in the 3-day event under the chairmanship of the Bahamas Prime Minister Philip Davis continue to press for a local solution to the unrest in Haiti. Canada's Prime Minister Justin Trudeau reaffirmed on Thursday his country's commitment to finding a lasting solution to Haiti's problems and announced a dispatch of additional security personnel to assist the local government. Meanwhile, more than 30 Haitian platforms rejected a possible military intervention and demanded that CARICOM stop being a sounding board of former colonial slave powers, now turned into imperialist powers. On Thursday, Guatemalan social movement blocked 12 national highways to protest against a judicial decision that prevents indigenous leader Thelma Cabrera from taking part in the June 25th presidential elections. Militants of the Movement for the Liberation of the Peoples also took to the streets to protest against the judges, who rejected a legal appeal presented by Cabrera's lawyers. On the verge of the upcoming elections, the Supreme Electoral Tribunal is blocking the registration of opposition candidates. On February the 3rd, electoral authorities did not allow Cabrera's candidacy to register, arguing that her vice presidential candidate, Jordan Rodas, did not meet all the legal requirements. Supposedly, there is a complaint against him for his performance as human rights attorney. As a consequence, Cabrera and Rodas must now go to the Constitutional Court to try to reverse the ruling against their candidacies. In Ecuador, the lack of credibility and rejection towards the government of Guillermo Lasso increases in the midst of new denunciations for the alleged links of his political operators with drug trafficking and the Albanian mafia. Our correspondent in Ecuador, Henry Piago, with the details.
The image of President Lasso's government has not recovered. His few public appearances and his speeches on national television have not been well received by the population, especially in the context of the allegations of corruption involving his trusted men, including his brother-in-law Danilo Carrera.
This is a government that has had little credibility on a regular basis. It has been politically beaten by the elections, and in the face of allegation of corruption, it reacts in the most chaotic way. It is a government that is desperate and has no capacity or credibility for action.
The changes and ministers' resignations in the government do not seem to be a solution for the social and political crisis.
The changes that have been made are not enough. What we are looking for is for the president to really create policies in favor of all citizens in education, health, and public safety. So far, the president of the republic has not worked for the needs of the Ecuadorian people.
Analysts point out that the government's weakness could deepen if it does not implement policies for the benefit of the people.
Right now, we don't have political alternatives or democratic solutions to this crisis, which is evident due to the weakness of the government and by all the scandals that are coming out.
At the same time, new accusation and interference of Guillermo Lasso's closest men, who would have links with drug trafficking, are being reported, convincing evidence based on which some assembly members are seeking the resignation of the president or to request an impeachment trial.
The links that Mr. Danilo Cabrera has with Mr. Ruben Cherres and Mr. Ditan Hig Albanese with the Albanian mafia and drug trafficking. We are working on that. It will be presented by the Commission, and what we are looking for is the impeachment of resignation of the President.
In the wave of accusation, representatives of social and student organizations in a more radical position begin to raise their voices in protest.
Our position is one of absolute rejection and of demanding that Lasso step down, that he resign from his post.
The resounding no vote of the Ecuadorian population has practically turned into a revoking vote to the government of Guillermo Lasso.
At the same time, the Temporary Commission for Truth, Justice, and the Fight Against Corruption, in the outrageous case called the Great Godfather, continues to meet with former government ministers as part of the investigation process.
Henry Piago, TeleSUR, Ecuador.
Now we move on to other topics. In Peru, a decree is imposed by the ultra-conservative government of the municipality of Lima, which restricts demonstrations in the historic center of the capital, goes into effect this Friday. The government of the municipality of Lima indicated that the measure will be carried out by the National Police, who will guard the areas of the government palace, the municipal palace, the main squares, and the Congress of the Republic, among other areas. Despite the decree, the people continue to call for mobilizations in the capital, demanding the resignation of President Dina Boluarte, the closing of the Congress, as well as the constitute process. Let's take a short break, but first, remember you can follow us on our TikTok account at TeleSUR English, in which you will be able to see news in different formats, news updates, and more. Other stories coming up, stay with us. Welcome back. In Turkey, a 5.2 magnitude earthquake was recorded Thursday night in Hatay province, with epicenter located 19 kilometers from the city of Uzubang. According to the U.S. Geological Survey data, the quake had a depth of 10 kilometers, collapsing several previously damaged buildings. The quake was felt in northwestern Syria and Lebanon. The Hatay region is one of the provinces most affected by the February 6 earthquake, in which more than 36,000 people were killed. Search and rescue efforts continue in Turkey and Syria. On Thursday, 3 more people were found alive in rubble more than 10 days after the earthquakes. According to the latest reports, a 17-year-old girl was rescued alive on Thursday after spending 248 hours trapped under the rubble of a building in the province of Kahramanmaraş, where the epicenter of the quake was registered. As of Friday, the joint death toll between both countries exceeds 44,000 fatal victims. The government of Turkey announced that reconstruction of areas destroyed by the massive earthquakes will begin in March. In a press conference in the city of Adana, the Minister of Urban Planning, Murat Kurum, said that 84 4,000 buildings were partially or totally destroyed by the disasters. CARICOM said that the reconstruction will be carried out by simultaneous bidding by the 11 provinces, after performing geophysical studies to determine the safest location for the new buildings. The minister warned against entering damaged buildings to recover personal belongings until local authorities certify that it can be done safely. The provinces affected by the two earthquakes of 7.8 and 7.6 magnitude were declared a disaster area on February 8th and placed under a state of emergency. The Syrian government reports over 6,000 people dead and over 5,500 wounded in the country as a consequence of the earthquakes that shook the nation on February 6. These are the latest updates provided by the Syrian authorities on Friday as search and rescue operations continue after the earthquake that affected 4 provinces. The government says that 11 days after the earthquake, they are advancing with the task of debris removal with the help of international teams, despite the sanctions imposed by the United States against the Syrian people. Now we go to other topics. On Friday, Russia rejected recent incitements by Washington to attack Russian territory as new evidence of U.S. involvement in the conflict in Ukraine. The recent incitement of the U.S. Assistant Secretary of State Victoria Nuland to Kiev to continue attacking the Crimean Peninsula is a further proof of Washington's involvement in the Ukrainian conflict, warned the spokesperson of the Russian Foreign Ministry, Maria Zakharova. In the same way, she also pointed out that Washington has ordered Kiev to avoid negotiations with Moscow. Likewise, the Deputy Speaker of the Crimean Regional Parliament, Vladimir Robkov, assured that the response to an eventual Ukrainian aggression against the Russian peninsula of Crimea will be devastating, with the means of attack of the highest impact. Russian President Vladimir Putin welcomed his Belarusian counterpart Alexander Lukashenko in Russia on Friday to discuss security and economic cooperation. Speaking at the top of the meeting in his presidency in Novo-Ogarnyovo, the Russian head of state said security issues, military cooperation, and the economy were on the agenda. In the meantime, the Belarusian leader said his country fulfilled all joint agreements on security and defense. He also said that Belarusian and Russian companies were cooperating to replace the imports of microelectronics, adding that Belarus was also ready to start producing fighter jets.
Relations, including security issues and military cooperation. However, the basis for everything is the economy. I'd like to note that the turnover of commodities is booming. It has reached a record high level over the last year, setting $40 billion in dollar terms. We will discuss, as usual, the entire spectrum of our relations, including security issues and military cooperation. However, the basis for everything is the economy. I'd like to note that the turnover of commodities is booming. It has reached a record high level over the last year, setting $40 billion in dollar terms.
The 59th Munich Security Conference opens on Friday in Germany and is said to be a tailor-made edition for the Western Bloc, as those opposed to the escalation of the war in Ukraine were not invited. In the event, participants are expected to discuss topics such as the conflict in Ukraine without the presence of Russian government representatives. Neither Iranian officials nor German opposition politicians who reject the shipment of arms to Kiev were invited to the conference. The meeting is expected to last until Sunday and will be attended by some 40 heads of state, 90 ministers, and leaders of organizations such as NATO and the United Nations. And thousands of flights to and from German airports were cancelled on Friday as workers walked out to press their demands over pay increases. The Verdi labor union is seeking a 10.5% increase for its members, or at least 500 euros, to make up for the high inflation seen in Germany and elsewhere last year due to the knock-on effects of the conflict in Ukraine has had on global food and energy prices. Meanwhile, Verdi chairman Frank Wukerne stated that the willingness among its members to stage strikes was big and the future walkouts could reach another dimension. He noted that recent protests at airports, public transport and child care facilities could be extended to garbage removal services and hospitals. And we have more news coming up after a final short break, so stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. Russia, China and South Africa began naval drills off South Africa's Indian Ocean coast on Friday. South Africa's Minister of Defense and Military Veterans, Thandi Modise, confirmed the exercises, which are named Mosi 2, meaning smoke in the local Tswana language. They will take place between February 17th and 27th off the port cities of Durban and Richards Bay. He further added that the trilateral drills will benefit all participating nations by aligning their operational naval systems and improving joint command and control. Modise also emphasized that the Mosi 2 exercise is a platform for the three countries to exchange military knowledge, skills, and operational experience. In Japan, the launch of a next-generation rocket failed on Friday after a possible ignition problem, the National Space Agency reported. Liftoff of the H-3 rocket was scheduled for Friday morning from the Tanegashima Space Center in the southwestern part of the country. According to a spokesperson for the Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency, apparently there was a failure to ignite the rocket's two solid rocket boosters after successfully completed ignition of the main liquid engines. Television images show the aircraft motionless on its launch pad and even emitting the white smoke from one of its main engines, suggesting a successful first ignition. The launch, which had been postponed several times, will be investigated and rescheduled. Now we move on to other topics. The death toll from Cyclone Gabrielle in New Zealand rose to 8 on Friday, as Prime Minister Chris Hipkins warned that the number was expected to increase as emergency crews made contact with hundreds of cut-off communities. The cyclone, which hit New Zealand on the uppermost region of the North Island on Sunday before making its way down the coast, cut off towns, washed away farms, bridges and livestock, and inundated homes, stranding people on rooftops. Communication and access to several areas remain difficult, with about 62,000 properties still without power. Meanwhile, the country's Premier, Chris Hipkins, said submerged farms could have an impact on the supply of fruit and vegetables in several regions.
Well, a lot of food-producing areas covered in an awful lot of mud, and I suspect that means a lot of those crops will be unusable. The true extent of that is hard to gauge at this point. There's a lot of fruit that's already been knocked down before picking season and is, may well be unsalvageable. I think we just have to prepare for the fact that we're talking about one of New Zealand's major food baskets, and the extent of the damage is very significant, right at a time when they would be gearing up for harvesting. So.
And Ivory Coast lifted its COVID-19 land border closure, officially reopening its roads to neighboring countries after nearly 3 years. The country shut down all borders in March 2020 at the start of the COVID-19 pandemic. Sea and air borders were reopened after a few months as the African nation depends on exports of cocoa and coffee, but land borders with Burkina Faso, Ghana, Liberia and Mali remained closed. Millions of people from these countries living in Ivory Coast were forced to use back roads in order to get home.
I'm very happy with the reopening of the border between Cote d'Ivoire and Ghana. It allows me to take my bus from Niamey to Abidjan and from Abidjan to Niamey because it's been 3 years since I returned to Abidjan. It hurt me a lot today. I'm happy because I'm going to return to Abidjan and find my old friend. I'm happy because I am going to the border. I'm very happy that they have opened the borders. It gives me more customers than on the other days.
And we have come to the end of this news brief. But remember, you can find this and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also, if you feel so inclined, please join us on social media for all the latest news. We are on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For TeleSUR English, I'm your anchor, Gladys Quesada. Thank you for watching.